World War II beta is just about finished at this point. As of this video going live, it is Sunday evening with about, say, 12 hours left to go or something like that on the beta, and up until this point, I've kind of kept my personal thoughts and constructive criticism out of the public realm and more so reserved to just myself, because I figured at this point, with the community giving the feedback and everything like that, that we'd see a bunch of changes made to the game over from weekend 1 to weekend 2, and we have seen a lot of different adjustments here and there since the very first day of the beta last week with the first weekend. But nonetheless, with that said, that's why I've kind of not put up any video like a couple of things that I'd change up until this point in time, because I feel like it's more effective to address it whenever there is more time to actually sit there and not have the crossover of some adjustments already being made. So in this one, I want to talk to you guys about today, after my 2 weeks of playing the beta, what I think are 5 things that should definitely be changed or adjusted before the time of launch come this November 3rd for Call of Duty World War II. So that said, you guys may very well agree with some of these things, you may disagree, but I want to get a little bit of a discussion going here in the comments with you guys, give you guys my top 5 things that I've noticed that I would definitely love to see adjusted. You guys can totally feel free to drop yours in the comments below, and hopefully this all just works out as a little bit of a constructive criticism with the beta, what we saw thus far, so that we can hopefully have a smooth transition into an absolutely phenomenal launch. First and foremost, I absolutely loved the majority of the beta. I hope this doesn't come off as anything where I'm just completely bashing the game or anything like that, but instead, I just want to bring up some things that I genuinely think should be adjusted, but for the most part, I genuinely enjoyed what I played. I had a ton of fun, especially compared to some recent titles and some things like that. This was probably the most fun in COD I've had in a long while. So that said, jumping right into our changes, the first thing that I'm hoping would be changed deals with the flinch. And this is something that I can almost guarantee you've had at least one run in with this during your time with the beta if you have played it either last weekend or this weekend. And for those that don't necessarily know what I'm talking about or don't necessarily have the visualization of it, it's basically when you're aiming down sight in a gunfight and somebody lands a shot on you, and instead of your shot staying steady, you flinch, which sends your aim completely up in the air and thus makes you miss a bunch of shots here and there, and ultimately you could end up losing the gunfight as a result of that. Now, this is something we've had in previous Call of Duties where there's actually a little bit of a reverse thing where the flinch helped out and gave you a view kick headshot, is what we've called it back in the day. That was really relevant in Modern Warfare 3 and Ghosts, if I'm not mistaken, but the flinch, while I'm not saying you should totally get rid of it, because if you do take shots, you should have some sort of result of taking that fire, but I'm hoping it's at least toned down a little bit. This is actually something that even was acknowledged by Michael Condrey and co over at Sledgehammer, so it is something that may very well be adjusted in time. The second thing that I'm really not necessarily the biggest fan of is the amount of shell shock that results as of teammates' explosives and streaks. This is something that totally would make sense, I think, to be as drastic as it is right now if it was in something like of a hardcore mode or something like that, where you do have the ability to damage teammates, you do have the ability to stun them completely, but when you take a look at it in core, it's not necessarily my favorite place and preferred place where I think it would make the most logical sense. I'm not necessarily saying to get rid of it once again in its entirety, but I do think that it should be at least toned down, because the shell shock of your teammates actually is just as strong and powerful as that of, say, an actual enemy. So therefore, while your team may just be inadvertently in the way, you could totally end up hurting your teammates' chance to help out the team just as much as the enemy is actually trying to. The third thing here that I would really like to be adjusted, and I'm sure that we can all relate to this one at some point or another out of the 2 weekends of the beta, deals with the spawns. Some spawn logic in particular I definitely feel needs to be adjusted a bit, and I totally understand where this is an incredibly delicate situation in terms of balancing for how the game works overall. Spawns are never an easy thing to end up working. From a developmental standpoint, you have so many different things to take into consideration and how they end up working, but to me specifically, I think Gibraltar and Aachen have a little bit of room for potential reworks and to be able to work out a little bit better. So if you know the maps, if you've played on either of them, you know that the spawn points are way in the back of the map, and the action and where spawn traps actually can really happen end up a little bit further, but it's almost like this patch of where the spawns are so far isolated out of the action that in order for spawns to flip, somebody has to actually go into that backyard portion of the map where, once again, not necessarily anybody really goes other than to spawn that's where they need to go to spawn out. So in essence, in say even things like TDM, you can have somebody completely up in your spawn, up in your face, and you still spawn right in front of them. So while this portion is so big, it almost makes it so that the map itself, the main focal points in the middle, are more so much smaller than that of the playable area in the back, which again to me kind of causes a little bit of an issue in terms of people running up in your spawns, no matter if it's TDM, hardpoint, domination, capture the flag, and you won't be able to flip out. So you'll have effectively no chance of getting out of spawn, and you'd be spawn trapped the entire match. Now, the next thing that I think could use a little bit of adjusting and a little bit of a change up is actually the health regeneration speed. Right now, it seems a bit too slow to me. Perhaps you guys might disagree here at this one, but I feel like if I end up getting in a gunfight with multiple people, I'll end up needing to take much longer than previous titles to regenerate my health to get back into that action. And as somebody that loves to run and gun, completely rush through everything, it definitely is a weird little change up that I'm not necessarily all that opposed to making the adjustments in my gameplay, but I feel like it might just be a little bit too low compared to where I would ideally like it to be. But that said, once again, you guys could totally disagree with that. Now, the fifth and final thing that I want to see adjusted here at this one are a little bit of an adjustment in the fire rate cap on different weapons. The pistols have a very slow fire rate cap. If you have seen any gameplay of that, any gameplay of pistols in matches, or just showcases that I've done here up on the channel, you'll definitely notice those ones could definitely use some fine-tunement. And again, other ones like the semi-automatics, like the M1A1 and then the Gewehr in the full launch of the game, perhaps, if that so does come over, those will definitely be interesting to see how those work out with the fire rate cap as well, because you could have the craziest trigger finger or just completely play on the cusp of that fire rate cap and you wouldn't notice a difference. I feel like for those sorts of things, you shouldn't be able to punish a player for having a little bit quicker of a trigger finger, though of course it does run that fine line of having a modded controller or trigger stops or something like that, which I can understand from a developmental standpoint where you want to outlaw those kind of things, but again, it's a fine line, but I'm just hoping there is a slight adjustment to raise that at least a little bit. But nonetheless, I think that aside from the standards that you always see about, say, hit detection and the connection and all that kind of stuff, I feel like in-game mechanics, I would love to see those 5 things be addressed and adjusted a little bit accordingly so that we can maybe see a little bit more of a smooth transition into the launch here. But again, that's just my feedback, my thoughts personally on it, that after these 2 weeks of the beta, I've picked up on. There's some things that have slightly irritated me, not necessarily broken the game entirely though, but just some things that I'd love to see adjusted. So that said, love to hear your thoughts and feedback here down there in the comment section down below. What do you guys think of these? Do you think that these should be adjusted, changed up in any way, shape, or form? Do you guys have anything that you would like to add here on top of this? Do you think that all things that I mentioned here are completely crazy? What do you think? Let me know down there in the comment section down below. But that said, that's where we're gonna wrap it up. So hopefully you guys enjoyed, and if you guys did, make sure you drop a like down below. And of course, if you guys are new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe to stay up to date with everything we have here regarding Call of Duty World War II. Any and all things we'll be keeping you guys covered here throughout the next couple of months up until the launch. And of course, we'll be killing it after the launch as well, keeping you guys up to date with everything here that you need to know. So if any of that interests you, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a beat. And finally, if you guys want to follow me over on Twitter, that is the best place to get connected outside of YouTube. Practically live on Twitter, so if you guys want to strike up a conversation, ask me a question, whatever it may be, link is down there in the description below. But all that said and out of the way, I hope you guys have a fantastic day. Thanks so much for watching. Mine has been Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care, and peace.